paint buckets, like what plaster would come in, the really big ones. Um, and I had to pee and poop in those buckets. I can smell it. The smell in that room was horrible because they didn't pour it out or clean it. Um, so then I started wetting the bed, and I remember them berating me about wetting the bed because the smell was so awful to them. They can smell it outside of my bedroom. That they had to put the mattress outside in the backyard, and they felt so embarrassed that they had to do this. And they called my social worker to tell her she needed to come and remove me now, but she couldn't. She didn't have anywhere for me to go, so I had to stay there. And I think it was some weeks that had went by because I remember it passing over a Sunday, and my grandfather came, and I can see him through the window, and they wouldn't let me go with him. Um, and I'm crying, and I see him, and I'm yelling, "Granddaddy, I want to go with you." Um, I was locked in this prison. Um, I didn't eat the same thing that they ate, and I know a lot of people do a meal for the adults, and then the children get something different. But they would be eating the most fantastic meals, and I'd be forced to eat hot dogs and pork and beans. To this day, I cannot eat hot dogs and pork and beans together. I can't eat pork and beans at all. If it's not full of brown sugar and spices and goodness, and you serving it to me as baked beans, I cannot eat it. So, whatever it was they had, I got the um, the poor man's meal. Uh, so I heard them telling my social worker that the reason they needed to get rid of me was because I was plotting to burn their house down. They said that when I was sleepwalking, I saw a book of matches that was on top of the television, and I was going to burn their house down with the matches. Now, I never said any of those words. Um, they could never tell the social worker that I said that to them or that they caught me trying to strike the match or anything. I will sleep on the couch. They left a book of matches on top of the television for a candle. Um, so yeah, that was Denise and Dennis. And I remember those names because I couldn't believe that someone married someone else and their names were almost the same exact name. Um, so that was hard. So when I finally got taken out of that home, I was moved into a group home. And I remember it being a lot of bunk beds um, in this one really big room. And it was just a lot of bunk beds. And some older boy, I was probably 7, some older boy kissed me in the mouth with tongue. He was probably 14. I don't know. I'm just guessing, but he was definitely not in my age range. He didn't go to elementary school, so I knew he was older. And I really don't remember much about that group home outside of being kissed by some random boy in the mouth and he used his tongue. So that was the third home. The fourth home, I lived with these sisters. They were older. They were probably they were older than my mom, but younger than my grandfather. So they might have been in their 40s, 30s or 40s. And they had a niece that they took care of, and she lived there, and they were okay. They weren't terrible. I don't remember them beating me or anything like that, but I think they just couldn't handle me because my history at that point, this was my fourth foster home. I was already deemed a liar. They were trying to say that I was, um, what is the word for people who love fire? I can't believe I can't think of it right now. But they thought that pyromaniac, I think that's the word. Y'all let me know. Um, But yeah, they labeled me, so by the time I got to that home, I was already damaged goods. And now as an adult, I know that children do certain things when they are dealing with trauma. They sleepwalk, they wet the bed, they lie, they steal, they do all of these things. Knowing the little bit that I know about child psychology, it wasn't something that was new, and it should have been something that the social workers noticed if they've gone to school for child psychology or whatever, to put them in the position that they were in. So I don't remember how long I stayed with the sisters, but then I got moved to a house where this family, they had a church in their basement, and they didn't have a lot of members, but they had a drum set, and I remember feeling like it was really dirty down there. So it was kind of a church setup, but it didn't feel churchy. But they had a church in the basement, and they were okay. I remember seeing a mouse run through the bathroom while I was using the toilet and being terrified because I thought it was a big roach. So I screamed, and someone came, opened the bathroom door, and I had my feet up like on the side of the tub. And they're like, "Oh, it's just a mouse. Why are you not tripping, but screaming?" It scared me. So I didn't live there long. They moved me from that home, and then I was in a home with probably the nicest foster mother. And I really wish I remembered her name, but I didn't get to stay there long. I remember the first few days that I was there, she bought me a bike, and she was so sweet, and she always gave hugs, and I couldn't remember the last time I actually got a hug from someone. That physical touch that you don't get, that's positive, um, that you don't get, you don't realize how much you miss it until you get it. Um, but she was so nice, but she ended up getting very sick um, pretty quickly, and I was moved from that home, and they asked me if I wanted to go where I knew someone, and I said yes, where? And they told me where, and they told me the woman's name, and I was like, yes, my family, um, I have some family that lives there, so absolutely, I want to go there. And that is where I, how I ended up in the house with the 15 or 14 other children, because I was the oldest of 15 total between the two houses. Um, and it was terrible. I call it the House of Horrors. Now, as I grew up, I did go back and visit there because of my foster sisters and foster brothers, um, because I loved them so much. No matter how short of amount of time, 10 months doesn't seem like a long time, but it felt like forever when I was there. So I went back to check on them to make sure they were okay. When I finished school, I finished high school, and I went in the military, anytime I came home, I would go and pick up one or two of my foster sisters, my cousin, my niece, and we would just ride out. And I did that because I wanted them to see that no matter what your upbringing is, no matter how horrible your story is, um, you can be okay. You can leave. You can make the choice to do whatever it is that you need to do to be successful. I was in the Army, and then even when I got out of the Army, I went overseas to work as a government contractor. So no, I did not follow the best examples, or didn't lead by example the best way always, but I did my best, right? I did the best that I knew how to do until I learned how to do things a little better. Um, so my life is not perfect. My life was never perfect. Um, So those years that I was in foster care, I didn't really see my brothers. I remember um, wanting to run away. So my aunt, one of my great aunts, didn't live very far from where I was in the House of Horrors, and I would go to her house. I would sneak and go to her house on days where maybe all the kids were playing in the backyard or something, and I would go out that back gate and run all the way down to Montgomery Street to see my aunt, because I knew there was a chance that my brothers would be there. And sure enough, almost every time I went, one or two of the boys were there, and I would enjoy my little time and just pay the consequences of them not being able to um, yell for me and I respond right away to come back in the house. But that's what I would do because I needed to get away. And as much as my brothers drove me crazy and as much as I drove them crazy, I missed them every day. I missed being with people who, even though we fought, I knew they loved me. And there was never a doubt about the love and the, maybe not respect, but there was never a doubt in my mind that my mom loved us and that my brothers loved me and that I loved every single one of them. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm doing these videos, telling my truth, my life story, because I want to be mean or whatever. All I can do is say everything that happened to me happened to me. And for anyone who was around and didn't speak up and didn't say, hey, this is horrible, shame on you, right? Shame on you. And maybe they were nervous, maybe they were scared, maybe there was a fear of speaking up, because people, for the most part, especially in the Black community, um, had a habit of sweeping things under the rug. You know, you ignore the ugly. You ignore the ugly behavior. You ignore the bad behavior, the maltreatment, the, horrible, horrible things. I remember in the House of Horrors watching the other kids get beat, but I couldn't say anything. We were children.